Chapter 16. Sarah had no idea how it was that Tragan had managed to get her back into his clutches. Her head was swimming as though she'd been drugged, or perhaps was recovering from a blow. He was dragging her along a narrow path, a path which seemed to stretch to a far horizon. All around the carnivorous plants were swaying and snapping to get at her. But now at her feet yawned the mouth of a deep pit, from which echoed and re-echoed the ghastly howls of the creatures from the spaceship. She turned in terror to find the staring eyes, set deep in folds of flowing flesh, only inches from her own. She started back, and as she plunged down into the blackness, she could hear the voice of a rescuer, come too late, calling to her desperately. "Sarah! Sarah!" She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound would come. This was it. She was going to die. With a jolt, she landed. The thudding of her heart melded with a knocking. The voice came again. "Sarah? Sarah, are you awake?" She lay for a moment, still possessed by the horror of her dream, and then it faded. "Sarah? Yes, I'm awake," she managed to say. "You asked me to give you a shout when it was nearly time to go to this do of Captain Rudley's," went on Jeremy's voice. "Shan't be long," she said. By the time she'd had a shower, needle jets coming from every angle, a cleanser and a pepper-upper, she decided, for the mind and spirit as much as for the body, and dressed in the fresh, clean clothes she found laid out for her, her own having vanished during her sleep, she was a new woman. A new woman, she thought, as she turned in front of the mirror, frankly admiring the straw-coloured high-necked shirt and narrow slacks and the way they set off the lines of her carefully slim figure. A new woman? There's an old cliché turned into a new cliché for you. And if I am a new woman, how come my subconscious cast me in the role of the victim? How come I didn't turn round and kick him in the ghoulies? If he's got any. Postponing the effort of self-analysis to another occasion, she shrugged ruefully, gave a final push at the swing of her short hair, and went to join Jeremy, who also proved to have changed his clothes. A short chalk-green tunic, which came down to mid-thigh, allowed his skinny bare legs, with championship-level knobbly knees, to emerge like a hen's below her skirt of feathers. "Do I look all right?" he said. "To be honest, I feel a bit of a Charlie." Tasty," she answered. "That tunic makes you look like a Greek god. Well, a Greek something or other. Didn't they give you any trousers?" "Not that I could see." It must have been Sarah's expression that made him decide to have another look. She sat down to wait. Their suite, while lacking the grandiosity of the quarters of the supposed ambassadors next door, was in no way less comfortable. In a way, it was almost too comfortable. The pastel colours, amber, a smoky tan, jade green, of the decoration and the furnishing, the thickness of the carpet, the softness and the reclining shape of the chairs, all were so relaxing in their effect that it would be difficult not to go straight back to sleep, Sarah decided. She looked round for something a bit more energizing. She hauled herself out of the seductive embrace of the armchair and wandered over to the window, realizing with a small shock that it did not show the park of the presidential palace as might have been expected, but a lake surrounded by mountains. There was a row of buttons at the side of the window. Sarah tentatively poked her finger at the first. Sure enough, the window opened. She leaned out. Far down the water, a small boat drifted. She could smell the trees, almost like the fresh smell of pine, and hear the lapping of the wavelets below. But how could this be? The guest house was surrounded by an acre or two of green parkland in the middle of a large city. For a moment, Sarah thought she must still be dreaming. But no. This was as real as the view of Hampstead Heath from her flat. Had they been moved while they slept? She pressed the next button to close the window. But instead, the view changed, as if she had changed the transparency while she was boring someone with her holiday shots. Now she was gazing across a moonscape, or that's what it looked like, with a black sky filled with unfamiliar patterns of stars. A large round object, like a soft balloon 6 foot across, was rolling over the surface towards her. She took a step backwards as it arrived just outside the window, stared into the room with 2 plate-sized eyes, and rolled away again. Of course! It was the same as the camellia setup. However they did it, they were able to program backgrounds so natural that they were indistinguishable from reality. The other buttons, as Sarah soon found out, produced a crowded swimming pool, a grand boulevard leading to a massive arch, a formal garden as rectilinear as an engineer's blueprint, all offering a package deal of sight, sound and smell, subtly enhanced to create a presence more sharply real than reality itself. "Hey, look!" Jeremy's voice jerked her round. Considerably more presentable, now that he had some trousers on. "They were hidden behind the door," he said defensively, catching her glance. He was standing by a couple of reclining couches, equipped with control panels on the arms and headsets like crash helmets. "Like the thingies a brig was trying in Space World," Jeremy went on. "You're right," said Sarah, crossing to him. "ER. Experienced reality. I was quite peeved I didn't get a go. Come on." She climbed onto one of the couches and plonked the headset over her cap of shining hair, where it automatically tightened to a snug but acceptable fit. "Do you think we should?" said Jeremy. "The doctor did say it was dangerous." No, Sarah said. "He was talking about the long-term effects on society." She inspected the push buttons on the arm of the couch. Standing apart was a solitary green button. She pushed it. Nothing happened. She tried again, pressing the first one in the top row. "Blimey O'Reilly!" she exclaimed. "What?" She could barely hear him. She was standing with a group on the side of a mountain. The sun on her face countered the crispness of the breeze, and the snow crunched under her feet as she took a step forward. "Try the first channel," she forced herself to say. She was watching ski jumping, like at the Winter Olympics, but it was ski jumping with a difference. The jumper was wearing a single ski, a small one, like a longish skateboard, and as she jumped, he stretched out his arms and grew a pair of bird-type wings. Sweeping into the sky, he turned and soared up the slope on the updraft of the wind, looped the loop, swooped down to within a few feet of Sarah's face, and up the face of the mountain again, even higher than the top of the jump itself. Sarah could just dimly hear the excited exclamations stemming from Jeremy. It recalled her briefly to her real situation and reminded her of the little green button. With an immense effort, she could feel her body on the couch. The sensations were superimposed on the present reality of the mountainside, like a reflection on the surface of a bubble. She pressed the green button. The ground fell away from beneath her feet. Her arms had become wings, and she was sailing through the sky above the snow-covered slope. She could feel the wind pushing at her cheeks, and through the goggles she was wearing, she could see deep into the valley below. But then, right ahead, the next jumper in turn was soaring up towards her. They were inevitably going to collide. At the very last moment, feeling the power in her body, reveling in the practiced skill residing in her muscles, she swung like a matador, turning from the charging death of the bull's horns, and soared up again, above the gaping groups of onlookers, above the strange gaunt trees, high above the snow-covered crags of the mountain peak itself. She could feel a crow of delight, a laugh of glee bubbling up from inside her. But when it burst forth, the sound she heard was not her own voice, but the deep voice of a man. So whose feelings was she experiencing? The flyers, or her own? Dismissing the thought to concentrate on landing, Halfway down the mountain, where the slope had gentled to the near horizontal, she came to a swishing stop, raised her hands to pull off her goggles, and pulled the headset off instead. "I did it! I landed without falling over!" Jeremy's voice was halfway between a squeak and a gasp. He pulled his own headset off and blinked at Sarah, distracted but elated. "That was the most exciting thing I've done since Nanny let me go on the big slide when I was 3. Sarah grinned at him. "Takes your breath away, doesn't it?" Jeremy gave a puzzled frown. "I didn't see you there," he said. "Well, of course you didn't. We were both experiencing the same thing, experiencing what the original skier did." Yes, I see." His face cleared, and he said in mock defiance, "Well, I'm jolly well going to have another go." He pulled on his helmet and stabbed a button at random. Sarah sat for a moment, remembering the strangeness of feeling a man's voice coming out of her mouth. And yet, at that moment, she had felt that she was wanting to laugh with joy. So whose laugh was it? Her thought was interrupted by Jeremy's voice. "Not nearly so exciting, this one," he was saying. "I'm just sitting in front of a big campfire warming my toes. I've got bare feet." His voice rose a couple of tones. "In fact, not just my feet. I seem to be quite naked. And there's a girl, and she's... Oh, my goodness me. No, don't do that. Oh!" He pulled the helmet from his head. "Well, really," he said. "Jeremy, I do believe you're blushing," said Sarah. "I mean to say," replied Jeremy, putting the headset down decisively, "going a bit far." Trying not to laugh, she donned her own helmet. "Now then, 7's always been my lucky number, so..." She pressed the 7th button in the 7th row. She found herself crouching down, creeping through a forest, or a jungle more like, she said to herself. She felt her booted feet pushing through the tangled undergrowth, and had to duck every now and then to avoid a low branch or a hanging creeper. A heavy stench of decay was in her nostrils, and in her ears a chattering, whittering, murmuring continuo which backed the solo shrieks of sonic alien birds. She'd stopped now, and was peering ahead as if she were looking for something. The heaviness in her hand turned out to be the substantial weight of a gun like a fat, stubby rifle. She must be stalking some sort of animal, like the lairds and people stalking stags in the Highlands, all that stuff. The crack of a breaking branch made her look to her right and start towards the movement she made out in the mass of leaves. Then she saw him. A man dressed very much as she seemed to be, with a leather jacket and high-laced boots. Sarah could see the shine of sweat on his face and a net of scratches red raw on the backs of his hands. Was he her quarry? But even as she repelled the thought with an unspoken no, or did she say it aloud, the man looked straight at her, turned and stumbled away, and she went after him. "What is it? What's going on?" As she heard Jeremy's distant question, she realized what the answer must be. "It must be one of those battle game things," she told him. "You know, where they fire blobs of paint at one another." The other player was out in the open now, in clear view, so she raised the gun and fired. Whoops, dearie, careful now, it had quite a kick. And sure enough, a splash of red paint appeared in the middle of his back. Feeling quite cock-a-hoop at the accuracy of her marksmanship, but it wasn't really hers. But it wasn't hers really, was it? She burst into the clearing and ran over to the man who had fallen to the ground, pretending to be... But he wasn't pretending at all. He was screaming the bubbling, wordless scream of a man who has had half his back blown away. The worst of it wasn't the fact that Sarah found herself lifting the gun, aiming it carefully at the base of his skull where it joined the neck, and pulling the trigger. The worst of it was that, Even while the rest of her was fighting to get away, to escape, to wrench the helmet from her head and regain her hold on the real world, a part of her was relishing the task of finishing him off, embracing with fierce satisfaction the joy of the hunter at the final slaughter of his prey.